Welcome to Focus on Why, the podcast where reflection sparks action. I'm Amy Rowlandson, and together we'll explore compelling stories, profound insights, and transformative experiences from inspiring guests worldwide. Feeling lost or unfulfilled? Searching for clarity, purpose, or meaning in your work and life? This podcast invites you on a journey of self-discovery to align your work with your values, shape your future with intention, and create a purposeful way of life. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Before we begin, have you read my new book yet? Focus on Why, Create a Purposeful Way of Life is co-authored with my late grandfather, George Fleming Kerr, and weaves in poignant journal entries detailing his experiences and insights of the 5 years he spent in captivity during World War II. Honest and heartfelt, this uplifting guide acts as your companion for life. Available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook. Check the show notes for links to get your copy today. Today on Focus on Why, I am joined by Tina Feigal. Hi, Tina. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Amy.
We have been kindly introduced by Joel Salomon. So thank you, Joel. It is unbelievable how many people he has pointed us into each other's directions. And my goodness, I am so glad that he has brought us together. So Tina, tell the listener, what is it you're focusing on right now?
I'm focusing on rebuilding my parent coaching business. I help parents with challenging child behaviors. I've been doing this since 2000 and 12 years in my own business, 12 years with an agency, and now rebuilding again, Tina Feigal Coaching.
And rebuilding because
It's just time to have my own business again. So, yeah.
okay, so it was 12 years alone, then in an agency, and then you're returning to going solo.
Yes, exactly.
Fantastic. And how have you come to working in this particular space of parent coaching?
Well, my why is that I grew up with a pretty much dysfunctional family. And when I was 2 years old, my mother got polio and was gone for nearly a year in the hospital and was pregnant when she got polio. So when I was 3, she came back with a baby and was really not functioning, completely by any stretch of the imagination, still needing a lot of therapy. And during the years that followed, she went in and out of functioning, being able to get out of bed, partly because of her physical condition and partly because I think she was suffering from quite a bit of depression. And so I became the person who filled in the gaps to a great degree. I took care of her. I made sure that she had her things from the kitchen that she wasn't able to get up and get and that kind of thing, and just was there for her emotionally as a young child. And my father was not functioning well because he was an alcoholic and couldn't hold down a job. And so it was pretty much a chaotic upbringing. And I use that as I have evolved to this place as fuel for being able to see into the heart of a child who's living with trauma. My mother died the day I turned 14 and a half, unexpectedly in our house. And so that was, first of all, kind of long term trauma and then sudden trauma that I was able to navigate my way through. My father then left us a couple times in apartments because he couldn't function as a human being. And so finding my way, finding my way, finding my way all along. And again, this helps me when I speak to parents to really see into the heart of the traumatized child. So I do work with foster and adoptive parents, and it's not exclusively traumatized children, but it's led me to understand that there are brain changes when kids are developing and as they have experienced trauma, there are brain changes. So I really am focused on how does the brain receive communication from the parents. And I help them realize that negative behavior is not willful, it's physiological. It's happening as a result of the brain trying to help the child survive. So,
Yeah, that answers my question. My goodness, when you said you grew up in a dysfunctional family, I've heard many people share their version of dysfunctional, and yeah, that is pretty intense. And to have had that much responsibility, aged 3 onwards, was huge. And it's led you to where you are now, which is this beautiful work that you're doing in terms of seeing into the heart of children and helping parents and the carers to communicate in the most beautiful way with these children who have, for whatever reason, become disconnected from potentially good relationships, or whatever it is that you step in and you work your magic.
exactly, exactly. And when you use the word disconnection, that's exactly where I focus is on connection, on helping them feel emotionally safe in their parents' presence. And one of the things that really supported me as I was growing up was that so I was in the ninth grade when my mother died at the end of the year. So I went into 10th grade, and my school counselor had heard that my mother died at the end of the year previously. So he called me into his office and made me his office page in the day before we had internet and cell phones. And so I would take messages to whomever needed a message in the school from his office. And he kept his door open while I was there every second hour. And if there was no one else in his office, he said, "You can come in and talk to me." And what a kindness, what an unbelievable kindness to just be sure that I knew I had support in the school. So years later, I wrote him a letter and I said, "Dear Mr. Kenyon," Wayne Kenyon was his name. "Dear Mr. Kenyon, I don't know if you remember me, but I just wanted you to know that I became a school psychologist following in your footsteps to make school tolerable and even welcoming and safe for other kids." He wrote back to me, "Dear Tina, of course I remember you. In fact, I read your letter out loud to my family at the Christmas dinner table." Years later, I'm not exactly sure how this even happened, but I located him, and he was in a nursing home in care, elder care. And I called and said I was coming, and he was waiting in this sort of like a living room. And I walked up to him, and we had like a minute long hug, and I could tell he was crying. And that went back to a day in which several of my aunts and uncles showed up in his office, and they were very concerned about the fact that my dad had just left in the middle of the day. Nobody knew where he was, and we didn't have that home to go to anymore. And they were scared of my dad. They were scared of for our future. And he, Mr. Kenyon, had had a huge emotional reaction to that. And he poured his heart out to me about that day. And I felt I can care about him here. I can give back. It was just the most amazing moment. And then a little while later, his wife was in the hospital, and I was able to put his walker in my car and take him to the hospital to visit her. And I got to meet her too. And again, I could give back. And that was like such a full circle experience that really buoyed my future as far as what am I going to do with my life. Yeah. So I did I worked a while as a school psychologist, and then I went to a training to become a life coach. And I walked out of there and I said, I'm a parent coach. It just came to me. And this was in 2000. There weren't other parent coaches that I knew of at all. So I just made it up. And now I have trained over 850 people worldwide to be parent coaches and helped build a really powerful team that served in a treatment foster care agency where the kids had special needs and the children were able to stay put in their homes instead of being moved from home to home because of their behavior.
Tina, there's often moments where it's so clear, the pivotal moment that purpose shows up in life, and then it's an easier route for someone to understand what it is that they are on this planet for. And for you, it has potentially been a calling that has been sitting there since a very young age. But that moment for me, hearing your story, was a day that you were given a role, the responsibility of being an office page. In a moment where you needed support, you were also given a responsibility, but not one that was going to weigh you down, like the being very young, which was huge. This is I've got a purpose. I've got an important role, and he gave you the opportunity to step up, but also one that was not too taxing. But also, he gave you his time, and that's what I hear you're doing now.
Absolutely. And that now I use that when I coach parents, give kids a purpose because when they have a purpose, they belong. When they don't, they struggle to belong. And I think we've lost track of this in today's world quite a bit because kids are on screens so much that they aren't participating nearly as much as they did back in the day in family life. So they don't have a purpose. And I think this has an effect on their mental health. Not only that, but what they're experiencing online um, can have a huge effect on their mental health. So this again has taken on all new meaning in today's world that we need to really help parents point back to family involvement so that kids don't get all their satisfaction and it forms an addiction in their young brains quite readily. So we do not want that for our kids for their future. We want them to feel as if they belong and they have something to offer. So I do hearken back to that day. You're so astute in picking that out, Amy. Yeah, really wonderful.
It is incredible, just the full circle moment, that an experience that you shared also, to be able to serve in a way that you felt would say thank you on a level that he was there at the time when you most needed him. Not that that's why we do things. You know, we don't do it so that we can then feel that we have to do it in return. we often have these purposeful actions or take purposeful actions because it's meaningful to us in the moment, but we know of what value it is. But we don't necessarily need to have it reciprocated for it to be the case. But for your perspective from this story, such a huge amount of time passed in between. And that's what's so special for me.
Mhm. It was just an amazing thing. It's kind of one of my things is I have friends that I met when, I was 14 years old that I still have right now, and even earlier than that, friends that I met when I was 6 and 7 years old that I'm still friends with. It's kind of one of my things, and I just don't forget about people, and I guess it was because they have meant so much to me all through those years.
It's often, again, I feel like I'm saying it's often the case, but it is that when somebody is sharing their purpose on this podcast, it's because there was a lack or a void, and therefore it means so much more to them to work in that specific area and to really hone the skills that they needed in those early years themselves. And this is what you've done, is you've become the parent coach that you wish you potentially your parents could have lent on and got some help.
That's right, and people say that to me, "Where were you when I had my kids?" And I'm like, "Y eh, yeah, I didn't have a parent coach when I raised my 3 sons either. I coulda used one," you know? So, we have that in common, and they've been the light of my life, it's just been phenomenal to watch them grow into men. All psychologists.
I was going to ask, did they step into a space that was similar to yourself? And the answer is a resounding yes. All three.
All 3. It's just phenomenal, and I just watch them give to other people, I watch them dedicate their lives to others' well-being, and it's like, oh, and they love each other. So I always say I can die happy. My kids love each other. It's just so wonderful.
And choosing a vocation in terms of they all went into that field, are they all working in exactly the same area, or have they got different strands, different strengths?
My oldest is a PhD psychologist, and he works with the Latino community with mental health. And my middle is the mental health coordinator for a school district. So he works with kids. He also was a child therapist before that. And my youngest is a psychiatrist and an internal medicine doctor, and he works with electroconvulsive therapy.
Wow. So very different disciplines, but still within the same area. Tina, you're just about to rebuild and work in a space that you know so well. What will you do differently this time?
What would I do differently? I just feel as if all the challenges I've had, as I said before, have been fuel. I don't think I would do anything differently right now, Amy. I can't think of a thing. I spent the time that my kids were growing up with them, and then I went back to school. So I graduated from college 20 years after I graduated from high school. And then I went on and got my master's while my kids were growing up. And then I went to work. And so that was such a gift to be able to do that, to just be with them. And then I launched my career. So, school psychologist, then parent coach. And I also taught at the university level right out of graduate school. And I also worked at another agency that became an early Head Start program in the United States. So, each of those steps has been informative for me. And I don't think I would have changed a thing, to tell you the truth. I feel like I've been on my right path this whole time.
Absolutely. And when I said, would you do anything differently? What I meant was in your approach to your work in terms of the rebuilding of the practice, what will you keep and what might you change in terms of how you approach the business side of your work?
Well, the business side of my work has really changed since in 2000, I started a business sending out spam emails, just like cold calling by email in a way. And then I started speaking in front of groups and handing around a clipboard and gathering email addresses, as I was speaking and writing a newsletter and getting more speaking gigs and then getting clients as it turned out. I wrote a book and then I wrote another book later on and so and that's called Present Moment Parenting: The Guide to a Peaceful Life with Your Intense Child, my current book. Um, and and then now everything is online, and online marketing is so crowded compared to what I was dealing with before. I wish I would have known more about that. So I'm in a big learning curve at this point on how to reestablish the business.
And is it a case of children reach out to you, or is it the parents that reach out to you, or a bit of both?
Good question. It's the parents. And what I do is I help to heal that parent child relationship from behind the scenes. So the parents are getting information and applying it and then, encouragement from me over time. And the kids don't even have to know that they're in coaching, which is different from family therapy, where the whole family goes in and talks to the therapist. I really love this model because I think that there's a chance that you might weaken the parents in the eyes of the child. Oh, they don't know how to parent me, so now we all got to go talk to a professional about it. And oh, they're so dumb. They should have known how to parent me, and their failures kind of thing. I don't like that aspect. In fact, one child said when a mom was using a line that I had given her, "Who told you to say that? Your shrink?" You know, they get suspicious. Where's this coming from? So, what I do is simply create the healing from behind the scenes, supporting the parents, showing them their incredible power to turn things around for their children, which they have not realized how much power they have. And the reason they have that power, as I referred to the need to survive, is that the parents are the ones who are the the survival aspect for the kids. The kids are dependent on them for survival. They're not dependent on a therapist for their survival or their teacher for their survival. They're dependent on their parents for survival. So when they can be the ones who make the changes to assure the child that they are safe in the parent's presence, it's magic. It's miraculous. It really is.
It sounds it, and it is a great model, as you say, because it doesn't weaken the trust that a child has if they have it at all with a parent. Because if there are relationship breakdowns in terms of behavior that are affecting things, then it does make it difficult to have a a dynamic that is a happy one. And seeing or hearing what you were just saying, what came to mind was when you said that you had the opportunity to just be with your children. This is kind of for what I'm hearing is that you're allowing the parents to just be with their children.
Yes. Yes. And that's why I call it present moment parenting, because it's so easy for us as human beings to take the past and think that it's going to be projected into the future. And what I help them do is let go of the past because it does not necessarily predict the future at all, especially if you have new information. And the parents are innocent. They're They're just lacking some information. They're doing likely what their parents did. And we have new information. So I love the phrase, we know more now about where behavior comes from than our parents knew and your parents knew. We know more now. So let's apply what we know. And in this present moment, here's what you can do with your child to make a better future. So all your power is in the present.
I love that. And what I'm also present to is that as a parent, you've never been a parent in the moment that you are now before. Every moment is new, right?
Exactly. Exactly. We are evolving as adults just as much as the children are. We're not fixed and set in stone at all. We're not. We have to allow ourselves, and we all know, like if you have a career, that you're growing in your career all the time. You're not just a static thing in your career, nor are you in your relationships with each other, with your spouse or partner. It's not static. It changes over time. Sometimes people say, "Well, that's just who I am." Well, it that who you are does not have to stay the same from the way it was a minute ago. You can alter it. You can be purposeful in doing so. And so when people come to me for coaching, I realize that they're ready for something new, or they wouldn't have shown up.
And you working with parents from behind the scenes, and the kids don't even know that this is going on. What about the kids as part of the adults that you're working with in terms of their inner child, their experiences as children? Do you have to work on that first before you can even work on a family dynamic?
Well, it's interesting because I have realized that underneath all of this is that the parents might be doubting their ability because of the way that they were raised. I usually don't even share my story with them. I equip them with what to do. And that notice really empowers them, helps them, incidentally, overcome some of the former traumas or relationship issues that they might have had because they know what to do now. So it's sort of like a behind the scenes, yes, that occurs, but I'm not a therapist, so I don't directly address their issues. Now, if I find that it would be appropriate for them to see a therapist, I absolutely recommend a therapist to them, and I have a referral list and do that. And they can either go to the therapist and help get some of those things resolved and come back, or they can do them simultaneously, parent coaching and therapy. But I don't want to step into the role of therapist because that's not my training. I'm a school psychologist by training. And so I stay in my lane and I support them. And one of the biggest things that has an impact on this is that they don't notice their own successes. And so at the beginning of every, not the first session, but the subsequent sessions, I say, give me 3 successes. And sometimes I get 8 or 9, but they haven't realized it. And so I say, now there's one. Oh, and when I asked you for 3, I'm hearing 5 more right now. and and they really will say, I had no idea. Yeah. They just don't have that sense of, oh, I did that right, because we're not raised to look for our successes. When you think about how we all get educated, we get grades, and sometimes there's C's and B's and A's, and we're being judged all the time, and when I was a kid, -5, the emphasis was on what you got wrong. And I think as kids, these adults have really looked primarily at what they've done wrong and not at what they've done right. So I love that part of my role is to show them, you know. I say, just look in the mirror and give yourself a big smile because you have done these things just now and it has made a difference. And sometimes they'll say, well, it was just a small thing. And I'm like, there's no such thing as a small thing.
I love that. And it's so true though, because when there is a particular occurrence or behavior pattern that is occurring, then it's really noticeable when it's there. But when it's not there, you don't notice it's gone because it's not disrupting the present moment. So as you say, they won't notice their successes because they're not noticing the bad behavior or whatever was happening. And therefore they again, it's a bit like when you have a cold. You really feel awful and you can't remember feeling well, but when you're well, you don't even think about not being well. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love that. And what I just immediately sort of took me back was when the kids were little, actually all the way through to their teens, my husband and I had a weekly relationship review and we would always look at what went well in terms of our parenting that week and then also what didn't go so well and how we could improve. And we were doing that every single Sunday evening. We'd just sit down and we would have an hour or so, just run through the week. Sometimes my husband had been away, did a lot of traveling, and it was a way of catching up, but it was also an opportunity for me to sort of share some great things or not so great things, but it was just a really good way of communicating. And we were always very good in terms, or we still are now, of showing a united front. We have, even if we don't agree on something, we would in front of the children so that there was a sort of solid outward oppression. And it was what you said earlier about giving people or parents the tools. It is around confidence and seeing that your parents are confident in parenting.
And and who else ever points out their successes? I mean, I love that you and your husband met and said what went well, because who does that? When does a parent ever hear that they did something right in our society? It just doesn't happen very often. They get a lot of feedback on what they're doing wrong from their relatives or their neighbors or whomever else is in their life, but they don't get what they're doing right.
Yeah, it's a funny dynamic because it's also not something that you tend to share with your peers. And if you do, it comes across as being that parent that's always saying their child is amazing kind of scenario. And it's not that at all. I've always with my peers brought it up and just said, "Oh, I've had a tough week this week," or "I've had a great week this week," so that there was always an understanding. And it was nice because I was able to then open up a topic that's not often shared with anybody else other than your immediate family.
Right, and what a world this would be if everybody had peers like that with you that you had. Oh my goodness, what a wonderful support group you formed there. That's just phenomenal.
And we're still going now, and our kids are in their early 20s. So
Perfect. Oh, just never stop. You don't have to, My kids are all grown. I'm still a parent,
yeah,
and a grandparent now. So
it is a very different dynamic, actually, it being parents of adults. And I'm yet to experience the unconditional love that comes with grandparenting. So, yeah, welcome to that club. I'm very excited for you.
thank you. Times five. Most amazing humans. So I was even saying to my son yesterday, your kids are lighting up my life this week. It's just been so phenomenal. So phenomenal.
So, when you said in the year 2000, Tina, there wasn't really a thing called a parent coach. Is there such a thing as a grandparent coach?
There's a really good thought. This is- you know, I've told people, they say, what are the ages of the kids of the parents that you've coached? And it ranges from 6 months to 53. I coached the mom of a 53-year-old at one point, but I haven't really coached grandparents except if they have custody of their children. their grandchildren. But grandparent coaching would be another wonderful field to get into, or aspect of what I do. Yeah, absolutely. Because, you it's a different kind of position to be in. You don't want to be too enthusiastic. You don't want to be critical. It's so easy to fall into some of these traps. So,
Yeah, there's a fine line to tread of wanting to indulge, but then also respecting your children's ground rules and just
exactly.
having, yeah, it's a whole different space. And there is a special magic that comes with a grandparent relationship. I had the absolute privilege, I believe, of 21 years with my grandfather, and then another, oh my goodness, almost, my maths is not there, but decades, I, maybe 40 plus years, more than that, 48 years with my grandmother. So,
Oh,
yes, right.
what a gift. And there's research now that shows that involved grandparents do have a profound impact on the development of children. Yes. Oh, oh, what a beautiful experience you had, Amy. Oh, my goodness.
It's interesting because I have had a previous guest who spoke about your earliest memories are often outside playing and often involve a garden with a grandparent. And
Yes.
mine do.
Yes. I love that. And a garden can take, some figurative garden of doing artwork together, garden of playing games together, garden of planting and growing together. Yes, 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 yes. All of that. All of that. And having that other adult in their lives, in whom they can confide sometimes, or in whom they can, learn, from whom they can learn by example. It's just so phenomenal.
And it goes back to when, again, I'm just going to go back to your three boys, that you didn't necessarily, or I don't feel that the way that you parented would have been anything other than you just were. You didn't preach, you just were who you were and you just did. And they've learned through your daily practice, and that's what you're sharing there, is a grandparent just gives time and they are patient. They have, that's the luxury of not having, that one position removed, is that they don't have different, same stresses as a parent has and responsibilities, so they do have that.
You can drop in, add some joy, go home. It's just so lovely. Receive joy, add joy. Yeah, it's just fabulous. It's
Well,
fabulous.
Tina, honestly, I feel like we could talk about this for days. Honestly, it's such wonderful work that you're doing. It really very purposeful. And I understand from your story, there is almost no other thing that I could imagine you ever doing as a result of what is fueling you. Those challenges that you said have come together to put you on this very purposeful path that you believe is yours and is yours for years to come, because it's very much a case of, yes, this is why you're here. This is your focus on why.
Absolutely.
How could someone reach out and connect with you? What's the best way of doing that?
My website is named howdoiparentthischeld.com. If you can just ask yourself that question, you'll remember the website, howdoiparentthischeld.com, and email me at Tina, Tina, at howdoiparentthischeld.com. It's a lot of typing, but it's worth it.
A small amount of typing for the best future that you could imagine. Tina, thank you so much, and thank you, Joel, for introducing us. What a absolute joy this conversation has been. It really has been. So thank you. How would you like to close out today's episode, Tina?
Well, I would like to thank you sincerely for this beautiful opportunity, Amy, to tell the story of my why and how it has evolved. And I'd also like to give a shout out to my cousins. because they are my blood relatives who have been there for me my whole life. And we maintain our contact, and we are just so fortunate to have each other. We were just reflecting this last week. We are so fortunate to have each other. So, whoever might be part of your life that way, don't neglect it. Don't neglect it. Get the support you need as an adult. It's, it's like we've got this thing that now that I'm an adult, I'm supposed to just be able to do everything, and we forget that we too need support. So if it's your parent coach, if it's your therapist, if it's your friends, your relatives, don't neglect yourself.
This episode's over, but let's keep the conversation going. How has this episode impacted you? Share your insights, takeaways, and reflections with actions on social media, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Your feedback creates powerful ripple effects, helping others to discover its value. Want to dive deeper into purpose? Check the show notes for links on how to work with me, where to buy my new book, Focus on Why, Create a Purposeful Way of Life, available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook, and where to sign up for Friday Focus, my weekly newsletter. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.